think
Hey, Paul.
sorry.
Oh no,
Yeah.
Paul, we're in, buddy. Don't worry about it. No one's gonna care.
All right.
Hello, Mr. Paul.
Hello. How are you?
Good, thank you. Tell folks a little bit about you, and then I have a hypothetical to throw at you.
All right. So, thank you for having me in the podcast team. So I am a fractional CMO and growth consultant. I'm a passionate problem solver when it comes to marketing strategy and business development as well, and growth overall. So I'm a very growth oriented individual. And how this journey started is, I think, when I backtrack all the way to my childhood, I just had instances where I've always been passionate about business and growing a business and thriving overall. So it kind of just bled into what I wanted to do for work. Also, it does help that marketing was my favorite subject in college before I chose my major. So eventually, when I had my first elective for marketing, I was like, well, I guess this is it. So that's how I ended up in marketing.
So then here's my hypothetical for you. Okay, you talk to various clients, prospective clients. You end up, taking on this client or that client. You walk into different situations. It's sort of the nature of the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's sort of like the best case scenario on day one when you walk into a client, and what's the worst case scenario when you walk into that company?
Ooh,
Probably the worst case is like there's no one there doing marketing, and they're like, marketing, why are you here?
yeah. Worst case is, worst case would be they don't know what you're doing there and why you're there. That
Right.
would be the worst case scenario. I think, um, I think worst also maybe a more realistic worst case scenario also is not being able to have a fruitful conversation that goes somewhere, or maybe having a lot of resistance, maybe just to the idea and the concept of overall, especially when you're in an environment where people don't understand what marketing does. Best case scenario is that they are ready to go. They're looking for someone like you, and they just want to get down to the details, and you can start talking shop. That's the best case scenario.
All right, that's good. Okay, so hi Sheila.
Hi, good morning.
And I forgot when we opened, but welcome to episode 159, both of you. Thank you for being here. Sheila, tell folks a little bit about you, and then I want to go over the best case scenario anyone could possibly walk into, and then the worst case scenario anyone could walk into as a fractional CMO. So
Awesome.
Who is Sheila?
So I'm founder of Butler Marketing Group. I'm located in Orlando, but my clients are all over. And I started my business in May of 2023 based upon my superpowers. I transform brands, especially in private equity businesses, and they're merging, or there's some sort of M&A activity and they need to re-explain their brand in a different way. I optimize loyalty programs. I'm a fractional chief marketing officer. I also really love partnership marketing. I've got a deep background in that. And then a ton of marketing strategy expertise. And I love the variety of the fact that my clients come from all different industries and have very, very diverse needs, because it gives me the opportunity to do a lot of different things.
So what's sort of the best case scenario when you walk into a new client, and what's the worst case scenario?
Well, the best case is, to Paul's point, they're ready to just roll up their sleeves, right? They're anxious and thirsty for leadership and someone to help set the North Star and to teach them strategy and to upskill the team, because I think that that's one of the things often that's lacking when you step in as a fractional CMO, is that they're doing a lot of marketing tactics, but they're doers and they don't necessarily tie those activities back to business goals and objectives, and they don't know the why of what they're doing. They're just doing it because someone asked. I think the worst case scenario is when they come in and there's a resistance and they look at you thinking, we don't need you. Why did someone invite you? What are you doing here? We don't want you. I think that's the worst, because then you're already sort of coming from this position of defense, when likely the CEO was the person who brought you in, And a lot of people are just wondering, how did that happen? Because they're not part of that conversation.
All right. So Sheila, imagine that it is day one, whether it's worst case or best case, you're there now.
Yep.
Right. You've talked to the CEO as part of like your sales process, but now it's like official, right? Now you're an official vendor. You sit down for like a quick meeting with the CEO, and the CEO says, "Hey, so Sheila, just from the nature of what you do and what I do, you work with way more CEOs or encounter way more CEOs than I encounter CMOs, right? So is there something that I should start doing so that we can extract every last cent of value for the, like, let's say year that you're going to be here? Or is there something that I'm doing now that I should probably step back from so that you can move forward on it?"
Well, so first what I do is I typically come up with a 100-day plan, and I present it as, once we've signed this statement of work, as a pre-discussion so that we can hit the ground on day one. And so that 100-day plan is going to be things like assess all the marketing activities, get to know the team, get to know my peers in the C-suite, because you're sort of parachuting in
Mm-hmm.
as a temporary C-suite member, right? And so really understanding what's going on and what's working and what isn't, and getting to know your team and building trust and having really open dialogue. What I would say is, from the one-on-one discussions with the CEO, I think one of the early discussions is, what's the expected rate of change that you're looking for in my role? Some organizations move at a glacier sort of pace, and others are very rapid. And so to understand what that expectation is from the CEO, and then, where does my role end and yours begins? What have you been doing? Because they've probably been a temporary CMO, kind of filling in gaps and plugging holes. So what have they been doing as the CEO in this temporary CMO role? And what can that person step back from over time? And what's that handoff, right? But I think you have to ask a lot of questions, and you need to be a very good listener, and really establish good communication from the very beginning.
Paul, how about you? What do you think? What do you hope that the CEO would start doing, or uh, the inverse of that, just stop doing, so that you can do your job?
I think start doing would be really opening up that communication. I think being transparent, trying to be as transparent as possible, regarding their
Right.
leadership strategy, what their vision is. I think that is that would be very important to probably to get from the client, who in this case would be the CEO.
Okay, so Paul, let's switch to a different kind of hypothetical now.
Mhm.
You're on stage. You're the keynote speaker. You're talking to 250 people. All of them became a fractional CMO, went out on their own yesterday. Like, you're day 2 of them being fractional CMO. They're brand new to it. Okay, finish this thought for that audience, right? A fractional CMO like you guys starting out today, you're going to be shocked by what?
Oh wow, that was that was a question I kind of was having trouble with. Now I am new. I'm fairly new to the
Sure.
fractional CMO
So what were you shocked by?
arena.
That's you're even better qualified.
I'm still learning some of the shocks as I go along. Um, I think I think
I have an answer for you. Having talked to 400 plus fractional CMOs in the last year,
I'll let you go ahead, because maybe I can. Yeah.
because I think my answer is going to be your answer. That's why I'm offering it. I think, especially for small businesses and professional service kind of businesses and solopreneur / freelancer style of businesses, there are marketing led businesses and there are sales led businesses, and you usually don't get to choose. So a marketing led business is you sell like a few things or the same thing over and over and over, and so you can just recycle the message, right? And in a sales led business, you have to talk to people who will ultimately decide that you are the individual they're going to give money to. Very different. most fractional CMOs, most fractional executives, period, are in a sales-led business. The marketers have the worst time with it because they're marketers. They think that there's some like secret key where if they like produce enough content or write enough articles or post on LinkedIn enough or whatever, make enough videos, that it's going to like set up like an engine that's going to like bring in clients. But they're all in a sales-led business, and unfortunately, you just need to talk to a lot of individuals who might have money and opportunities. It's slow. You can't scale it the same way you could scale a marketing size. Marketing just needs some creativity, some discipline, and money, right? And just like throw money into the hopper. Whereas sales led, very different. But I think fractional CMOs, the sort of biggest shock they have is that they're salespeople now selling marketing. They're not marketers selling a product or a service. How'd I do?
I think you did pretty good because it's very relative, even just in my role in marketing leadership, my salary role that I had. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to sell marketing. Because honestly, a lot of people don't understand what marketing is. That's just what I've come to encounter. So, yeah.
Sheila, how about you? You're talking to that audience. They're all like day 2 fractional CMOs. I mean, they're experienced. They've been, they've led marketing in inside corporate, but now they're out on their own. And the thing they're going to be shocked by the most is what?
There are many CEOs who do not understand marketing. They don't understand the difference between branding and messaging and strategy. Or they'll ask questions like, tell me about your experience in digital marketing. Which part?
Yeah.
It's not so simple and one-dimensional. That's been the piece that's been surprising to me, is that there's a great deal of explanation. Fortunately, I've worked for some CEOs and they've been very transparent and say, part of your job is to educate me and your peers in the C-suite to teach us marketing because we don't know it. Maybe I had one class in college, and college was 25 years ago. And that's if you're lucky that they took one class at all. So there's a great deal of education that comes along with it, because I think in part it's very difficult for them to understand and measure the value that you're bringing to the organization if they fundamentally don't understand the basics of marketing and the difference in the activities.
Right. No. Okay, so Sheila, finish this thought for me. Many clients just don't understand what?
Well, so when you are a fractional CMO, you don't come with a magic wand. So when you come into an organization,
folks, there is a magic wand. You should pay people a lot of money to get the magic wand. Don't listen to her.
I live near Disney, and so the fairy godmother has one, but I personally do not. I wish I did. It would be a lot easier. The reason why I bring that up is that I think that there's an expectation when a fractional is brought in. It's the organization is at an inflection point, and they need someone to come in and very quickly start to create change in the organization. If the organization has been losing money for years and years and years, it is an unrealistic expectation, and you're being set up to fail, frankly. If the expectation is in 90 days, you're going to come around and like literally start cranking out money for the organization. It doesn't work that quickly.
And Paul, how about you? Most clients just don't understand what?
Actually, I want to second also Sheila on that point, that marketing is, it's not magic, that, it's very strategic, that a lot of value comes in strategy. I've had a recent, a client that I work with where when it comes to selling marketing here, and I had to sell and say, well, strategic value is just as valuable as creatives. So, creative strategy and marketing strategy are of equal value. And without having been able to do both, it dilutes any of the solutions that we come up with. So the small things like that sometimes whether somebody thinks they could just get consultation and get plans, but if plans don't get executed, then you lose value. So I think most clients I come across don't understand how heavily strategic marketing is. I think that's the one thing that I'm coming across.
Yeah. So now we're going to shuffle you guys off of this stage that you're giving this speech on. But before you go, just finish this thought. We'll start with Paul. The biggest lesson I've learned about getting clients is what?
The biggest lessons I've learned about getting clients so far is understanding, setting expectations very clearly. And I think that's one thing I've learned so far: setting expectations clearly and really aligning with the team and integrating with the team is something that I'm coming to. And how to integrate with the team effectively, some of the lessons that I've really taken away.
And Sheila, how about you? If you're going to talk to this audience, they need to go find clients. The biggest lesson for like getting your client or getting your first client is what?
It is a long sales cycle.
Yeah.
I think, especially for a medium or larger size organization, there's a great deal of generating awareness for the fact that you're out doing this as a fractional and consideration. And there's proof of concept. I think that ideally the best fractional engagements come from it started as a project. You've proven your worth. You've built a level of trust and communication with them. And now they realize that when the project is over, there is still more work to be done. And they have a level of respect for you and they now understand what you can deliver and they want to bring you in. That is very different than putting on LinkedIn, I'm a fractional CMO and here's how you can get in touch with me, and think that people will just start flocking to you. In part, by the way, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but most of the time when I say part of my services are fractional CMO, you get this sort of golden retriever head tilt to where someone goes, huh? And it's in part, and then I have to say, fractions, remember fractions? Like a third of the time, a fractional CMO is a part-time CMO. There's just a very different level of education that's out there.
It's always tricky when you're in a business where you need to educate your market into existence.
And yeah, can I add to that? If you don't mind. So, that is something that I've learned. Actually, fractional CMO is not where I had chosen to end up. I sort of was in between jobs, and I was taking up consulting work on the side. What I realized is you get this small projects, this small marketing projects, and then these small marketing projects lead up to understanding that there's no marketing leadership at all. And then I found myself providing that marketing leadership. And then automatically I was like, well, this is a fractional CMO position, technically. So part of that is kind of some companies don't even know they need a fractional CMO, which probably is that long sales cycle. So you have to educate them even what that is. But, a lot of, yeah.
So, Sheila, you talk to a lot of clients, you're talking to prospective clients. The funny thing about marketing is even people who don't have experience in marketing think they understand some of marketing. And so, ideas and concepts and tools and stuff sort of, become trendy and then not. When you're talking to clients these days, what do you think is overrated? Like they want to talk about it, but it's overrated. And what are they not talking about enough? Like what's sort of underrated or underappreciated in marketing these days that you think clients would benefit from paying more attention to?
So I'm going to grossly generalize this, but I think that a lot of people believe that they understand marketing because they see commercials.
Yeah.
And so everyone has an opinion about marketing. And it's very subjective, especially when it's not tied back to an original business objective. And what I think has been eye-opening to me with clients is that they want to rush to the things that they see and they sort of know about. Like, let's just work on the logo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, in my process, I've got this proprietary process called Butler Branding Bootcamp, and it's the foundational of what's the strategic framework and space that we want to operate in relative to our competitors. What are the rational, functional elements in our brand, all the way up to the intangible things like the brand promise and your point of difference and your target audiences and their personas, and then the brand platform, which is all the messaging. And once you define all those things, then I go, okay, now it's time to decide the company name. And then let's work on the logo. And from the logo, it inspires the creative look and feel to create all the marketing assets for all of your channels. If you just jump to the logo, the logo should represent something. It should be infused with the brand personality. It should communicate the promise in some sort of way. Or even when they say, what should the company name be? I don't know. Do you want to go heritage? Do you want to go abstract? Do you want it to be delivering on the promise in the name? All those different things. I think that people inherently skip to the place they're most comfortable with, and that's where they want to go. And my job is to slow them down so that they really do build something that's very foundational, and they make really smart decisions because everything builds upon the previous decision.
Paul, how about you? What do you think these days is sort of overrated, and what do you wish people would pay more attention to, or give more credence to?
I think a lot of times I think it's just feedback. I think for me, one of the strongest, what informs me best is usually a good sense to get feedback, and that's just data. And that's to really, have customer insight, to really have good information about your customers. And that's work to be done. There's work on that side to really understand your customers. People can start off with what they think their typical customer is, but over time you want to provide surveys and things like that on top of other KPIs to really get to know your customer. I think once a brand knows itself, they know what they offer the market, and they know who their customer is, and they form that connection line. I think then they really have a strong engine for growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I'm going to give you guys, it's either the easiest or the hardest question you're going to have all day. It kind of depends on you. But we can start with Paul. So Paul, what's marketing?
Marketing in a simple way that I love to describe it. It's where psychology and business meet.
Mm-hmm.
That's my shortest version.
And Sheila, what is marketing?
I feel like I'm in a philosophy class, and it's the final question, and I'm supposed to write a paper before I leave the room, and I've got 90 minutes. And the professor writes on the chalkboard, and it just says "why" with a question mark. And you go, wait, what? I think marketing is so many different things. Honestly, I don't have a good answer for that. It's actually fascinating given the fact that that's what I do. I think that there's so much that goes into it. It's strategy, it's creativity, it is data-driven, results-oriented, moving the business forward. It's partnering with sales. It's creating expectations in the minds of consumers or your business clients, and really explaining in very simplistic terms, what are you promising if they decide that they want to engage with you?
Well, that's pretty good. Well, that's pretty good. Okay, so Sheila, as you're talking to prospective clients, what's like a red flag, and you're thinking, not these guys, and what's a green flag for taking on someone and be willing to go further in the sales process and maybe ultimately signing?
So when I started, I had someone that asked me to put together a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walked through the proposal, there was this sort of immediate reaction to the price point. And I had created preferred pricing, knowing that I had a
Right.
relationship with this person because of a networking group that we're in. But he was very offended and was very vocal about it. And so he said, can you revise the proposal and let's regroup next week? And I was talking with a friend of mine over the weekend, and he said, Sheila, there are clients that every year in my company, we would get together at the end of December, and I bring in my whole team and say, who do we need to fire as a client? He said, this is a client that if this is his initial reaction, he will never respect or appreciate your work. He will push boundaries. He will make your life probably miserable. And there's a thing that you can add, which I love. It's called a PETA tax. It's basically, if you're going to be a pain in my ass, I might just tack on a little bit more so that if I find that you're kind of like scope creeping or whatever, I can just say, you know what, but there's a little bit of a PETA tax bill in there, so I can take this. But this particular instance, I thought, yeah, my friend is right. This is not how I should be treated. And so I just don't want to take on that client. So I think that's the biggest red flag, is if you can tell that there is a general lack of respect for you or your work, then that's probably not an engagement they're going to enjoy. And it's better to not take their money than to go into something that you think might make you miserable. The green flag is just the reverse, which is someone who really wants to embrace and understand and welcomes you because they realize that there really is a need for what you do with it, and that need is not in existence at the organization.
No, that's good. Yeah, okay. And then Paul, so what are red flags or green flags around a potential client?
So, I have to say that I am still new into this world.
So it's all red flags for you right now. It's all red flags, but you're going to ignore them and pretend they're green flags.
I got a rough road ahead.
We've all been there, bro.
So, but I think, unresponsiveness to me is something that maybe I'm looking at as some of the experience I've gotten so far. I think having someone who's unresponsive to the plans that you're putting out and kind of not engage in and sort of just want things to kind of run by themselves. I think that is the lack of collaboration, and I think that is something I've come to see a lot even in as an employee and now as a fractional CMO, is that I sometimes people just want marketing to run on its own, and they don't really see the amount of collaboration that's needed, and not just with leadership, but almost most domains when it comes to a company, because marketing affects customer service, marketing affects sales, marketing affects operations, marketing affects almost every single thing in a business. So there needs to be a ton of collaboration. So that is something that I would prefer, maybe, that clients I get in the future, that they're really ready to collaborate, they're ready to work together, they're ready to come up with solutions together. So
okay, so this is for the both of you, and we're gonna switch around a tiny bit. But one of the different things about this podcast is that all the guests, as long as it's a Thursday, all the guests pick their own date and time slot for recording, which means we don't curate guests. We don't think oh, you know what? On February 17th, let's have 2 guests who do oil and gas kind of thing, right? Or beauty or CPG or whatever. People just show up. It's kind of like you're in a building full of fractional CMOs. You step into an elevator, someone else steps into the elevator. And so one of the things we do starting in season 6, and this is season 7, is have the guests, they get to ask each other a question. So I'm going to give Sheila a moment to formulate a question for Paul. And while you're doing that, Sheila, I'm going to ask Paul just an outro question, and then we'll switch it back. So think up a question for Paul. Ask him anything you want. A bunch of people have asked a bunch of questions at this point. Everything from how do you find your clients to revenue questions, anything you want. And then Paul, these days, who should be reaching out to you, and how should they connect with you?
Yes. So Organizations or leaders or marketing leaders. So usually, my experience has been working with maybe marketing leaders in the B2B space, who don't have
Mhm.
big enough teams and need a partner, a strategic partner, and also an execution partner, or um, companies especially in the B2B space where they don't have marketing leadership, and it's either the CEO or the director of sales trying to manage, or director of business development trying to do all the marketing work. So in that case, those usually are, great opportunities where a fractional CMO can step in and sort of help bring everything together.
Okay.
Um,
And
so
how?
I'm sorry.
And
What's that?
how to connect with you?
And how to connect with me? So they can connect with me by sending me an email at paul@biashabiz.com, or they can look for me on LinkedIn. Name is Paul Mutuura, and send me a DM. Or just connect with me on LinkedIn.
All right. All right. Sheila's going to ask you a question, then you're going to ask her a question.
All right.
So, Sheila, what's your question for Paul?
So, Paul, you probably receive the same type of emails and LinkedIn messages on a weekly basis around people who are offering to bring you leads,
Mhm.
right? Have you spent any time and dollars investing in some of these lead gen types of opportunities, such as like LinkedIn Sales Navigator? And if you have you found those to be successful for you?
I um, I do get those leads, and sometimes I'm like, did this work? When I see those messages, because I sometimes, my marketing brain kind of interrupts. But I do know from experience that LinkedIn can be a great source for leads. I think it's all about the strategy that someone approaches. I haven't worked with anyone to generate leads on there, but I have used LinkedIn before to generate leads. So I've been one of those people probably sending a message. Um, and it can work very well. I think there needs to be work on, of course, on building credibility as well. Having your website and all those things help at the same time. But I do believe, and I do have experience with LinkedIn being a very successful way to get leads. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, Paul, you can ask Sheila a question. And while you're formulating it, Sheila, these days, who should be reaching out to you? And by the way, I forgot to mention, I used to live in Orlando. I lived in Oviedo and then down by UCF. My wife's from there. Her family's been there since the '60s, and so it's a very transient kind of city like Las Vegas. So, but there are people who live there for generations. Surprised me. And so, who should be reaching out to you these days? Like kinds of companies, size of companies, and then what's the preferred way to get in touch with you?
So they can reach me at Sheila at
Mhm.
butlermg.com. Butler MG stands for Butler Marketing Group. I think that the lane that I'm finding is really evolved over time. It tends to be medium to larger size
Right.
organizations, and also in private equity, because of the need to bring organizations together and create new brands as part of the function of bringing disparate organizations together. Um, it's been really fun for me. So yeah, or LinkedIn. So Sheila Butler in LinkedIn
Mhm.
as well. I'm happy to reach out to people. And in fact, I'm happy to offer a free 20-minute consultation if people just want to brainstorm a little bit and get some thoughts from me, and then see if there's an opportunity to engage further.
Yeah, it's dangerous. Say on a podcast, people can have 20 minutes of your time for free. Okay, and then Paul, what's your question for Sheila?
Oh man, I was going over like 3 questions, and I'm like, which one should I go with? But I'm curious to, what do you think is probably like the top 3 pain points that your audience has in when they're seeking you and they want to work with you?
Well, you'd be surprised at how many organizations actually don't have a marketing budget, and they don't have KPIs, and they're not measuring their work. So I think that's part of it. Another part of it is they don't really understand the strategy needs to tie to business objectives. And then the strategy drives the choice of tactics in owned, earned, and paid channels. And so they're doing a lot of things, but they don't know why they're doing it. And they're not measuring the effectiveness of what they're doing. And then I think the third one has been it's uncomfortable for some organizations to make decisions and stick with them. And especially with my Butler branding bootcamp process, everything is very foundational. You lay a brick, and then you put the next brick on top of it, and you build and build and build, which means you want to be very thoughtful about the decisions that you're making. But once you made that decision, we're not going back again. We're not changing it. And I think that sometimes there's this fear that I'm going to make the wrong decision, so I don't want to make a decision at all. And that tends to elongate the engagement with a client if they're at this point to where they want to ask a lot of people their input because they're worried that they're going to make something, worried that they're going to make a decision that they'll regret later.
All right, guys, this has been fabulous. These answers were great. Really good. You never know. Guests show up. You never know. Honestly, but it was great. Okay, so that's it. Everyone knows how to get to you guys and who should be trying to contact you. And so thank you both for being here, Paul and Sheila. And thanks for watching. You're probably watching this as a clip, but in case you're not, hi. Thanks for being here. And we'll see everyone next time. See everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.